My grandson forced me to drink water from the toilet when I refused to sell the farm for his lavish wedding. I didn't cry. A week later, I had the proof on his phone that sent him into a panic. I'm glad you're here. Stay until the end and tell me which city you're watching my story from. I want to know how far it has traveled. It all started that night. I was standing in the corner of the kitchen, my hands clutching the edge of the table, listening to the laughter and commotion coming from the living room. Ethan, my grandson, was celebrating his bachelor party. All his friends were there, beers and drinks everywhere, the music rattling the walls. I was just there, silent, trying to breathe evenly so my knees wouldn't ache so much. It was cold, that November chill in Chicago that seeped deep into my old bones. "Hey, Grandma," Ethan yelled, his voice loud and utterly devoid of respect. "Bring more liquor, chop chop, and clean this table. It's a total mess." He didn't even bother to introduce me to his friends, just blurted out, "She's just the live-in help." I heard that, and it felt like a hand squeezing my heart. Live-in help. Me, Eleanor Thompson, his own grandmother, the one who raised him ever since his parents were sent to prison. That's what he calls me. Trembling, I carried the tray of liquor from the kitchen. My thin hands, with knuckles swollen from a lifetime of work, were now shaking even more from the cold and the shame. I tried to keep the tray steady, but, dear God, the pain in my knee was so sharp that a glass of wine slipped, falling right onto the new rug my mother had left me. The sound of the glass shattering made a loud crash, and the red wine spread like blood. The room fell silent, just for a few seconds, and then Ethan whipped around. "Useless old woman," he screamed, pointing right at my face, his eyes wide. "What the hell are you doing? Dropping everything?" I just stood there, frozen like a statue, my lips pressed tight, unable to say a word. His friends started snickering, some even whistled. Ethan pulled out his phone, turned on the camera, and shoved it in my face. "Look at this," he shouted, clearly enjoying himself. "This is my housemaid, a trashy old hag, a total mess." One of his friends, his face red from drinking, let out a loud laugh. "Is this lady really the help? Looks like she crawled out of a dumpster." They all roared with laughter, as if I were their entertainment. Ethan didn't stop. He pushed me toward the bathroom door, still recording with his phone. "You wanted wine so bad you dropped the glass, right? Well, if you're thirsty, here you go. Drink the water from the toilet. You'll love it." I just stood there, looking him straight in the eye. Not a word, not a blink, just my gaze, heavy with disappointment. Ethan let out a mocking chuckle, turned back to his friends, and continued his sick game. I went back to the kitchen in silence, still clutching the empty tray. I washed every glass, folded the tablecloths, and cleaned the wine stain from the rug. I did every movement slowly, as if I was trying not to break. While I was cleaning the rug, I glanced over and saw Ethan's phone, left on the table, the screen still on. Late into the night, after all the guests had left, the house fell silent. Ethan was passed out on the sofa, drunk, snoring like a pig. I tiptoed to the door of his room, quiet as a cat. The phone was still there, unlocked, no password. I know his habits. That boy always thinks no one would dare touch his things. I picked up the phone, the screen lit up, and there they were, the videos he'd just recorded. The pranks he found so funny were now in my hands. I pressed my lips together. My hand didn't tremble. This time, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to let him cross this line. 7 years ago, that day was seared into my memory, like a knife twisting in my heart. I was sitting in the back row of the courtroom, my hands gripping the edge of the wooden bench, listening to every word of the judge's sentence. Samuel, my son, and Rebecca, my daughter-in-law, were sentenced to life in prison for murder. Hearing it felt like half of me had died. The judge's gavel fell, cold and final, like a nail being hammered into the coffin of my remaining days. I didn't cry. Not because I was strong, but because I had no tears left. Ethan, who was 18 at the time, was sitting in the family row. He was thin, his eyes lifeless. He wasn't crying, he wasn't angry, he was just staring straight ahead. I felt so sorry for him. His parents in prison, all alone, like a little bird fallen from its nest. I didn't turn my back on him. I couldn't leave him helpless like that. After the hearing, I walked straight to the lawyer's office and asked for custody. "He's my grandson," I told them, my voice trembling but firm. "I'll take care of him." I took Ethan to the old house on the outskirts of Chicago, where Alexander, my late husband, and I had spent our happy days. The simple wooden house still smelled of old paint, with a yard full of fruit trees my husband had planted. Ethan walked in without a word, heading straight for the room I'd prepared for him. I stood at the door, watching him drop his backpack, his eyes never leaving the floor. "Get some rest, honey," I said softly. "I'm going to make lunch." He nodded without looking at me and closed the door. I put all my effort into caring for him. I cleaned his room, set up an old wooden desk for him to study, and bought him new clothes from the local market. Every morning, I'd make him fresh oatmeal and his favorite buttermilk pancakes from when he was little. I'd put the plate of hot food on the table and call out, "Ethan, get up for breakfast and get to school." He'd come out with a sour look on his face, say nothing, and sit down to eat. Sometimes he'd leave the whole plate, just take a sip of water, and grab his backpack. I'd tell myself, well, he's in shock. You have to be patient. He'll be all right. To support Ethan, I gave up my dream of a peaceful old age. I took on extra jobs for the neighbors, cleaning, doing laundry, sometimes washing mountains of dishes after their parties. My knees ached, but I gritted my teeth and kept going, just to save up for his tuition. "Grandma, I need $3,000 for school this week," Ethan would say, his voice empty, staring at his phone. "All right, I'll get it," I'd reply, and then run out to borrow money from Rose, my neighbor. I thought that if I tried hard enough, Ethan would learn to love, just as I had taught his father, Samuel. But everything changed after Ethan brought a friend home, one with a flashy football jersey and slicked back hair. They were in the living room, laughing loudly. I was in the kitchen chopping onions, and I overheard the friend say, "Hey, Ethan, you live with this old lady. She looks so country. Bet she doesn't have a dime, right?" Ethan laughed loudly, though it sounded forced. "Yeah, she's my grandma. As long as she supports me, it's enough." I froze, my knife hovering over the cutting board. I wanted to go out and say something, but I just kept chopping in silence. That night, Ethan didn't eat dinner. He just mumbled, "Grandma, don't come out when my friends are over. It's so embarrassing." I stood in the kitchen, clutching a wooden spoon, feeling my heart being squeezed. From that day on, I noticed he looked at me differently, as if I were something he wanted to hide. Ethan started talking to me without any respect, "No, please," or anything. "Grab me a bottle of water from the fridge," he'd say, his eyes glued to his phone. Once while I was cleaning the table, he brought friends home, all of them laughing. I smiled to greet them, but Ethan pulled one of his friends aside and whispered, "Stay away from her. Don't let her embarrass me." Hearing that was like a slap in the face. Silently, I picked up the rag and went back to the kitchen, pretending I hadn't heard a thing. When his friends came over, Ethan got even worse. "Go to your room. Don't come out," he'd tell me directly, his voice cold. "My friends don't like seeing old ladies wandering around." I'd nod, grab my broom, and go to my room, closing the door. I thought, he's young, impulsive. He's suffered so much without his parents. I have to endure it, as long as he's comfortable. But I started to see a disdain in Ethan's eyes, the very same look Samuel would give me when I told him to cut back on the drinking. I stayed quiet, cooking, washing clothes, paying his tuition on time. I thought if I was patient, the storm would pass. But I didn't know that this storm wasn't just big, it was about to sink everything I had ever hoped for. The first year Ethan lived with me, he seemed obedient, though he was always quiet. He went to school on time, ate what I prepared, though he never said it was good or thank you. I thought he was still in shock over his parents, that he'd gradually open up. But in the second year, things changed. Ethan showed his true colors, lazy, listless, with no trace of the quiet boy from the courthouse. I remember one time he was running late for school. I was standing in the kitchen doorway, a wooden spoon in my hand, yelling, "Ethan, get up, you're going to be late." He poked his head out of his room, his hair a mess, and his eyes red from sleep. "Don't yell so much, it's so annoying," he grumbled, and shuffled to the bathroom. I just stood there, spoon in hand, shaking my head. I told him softly, "You have to be on time, you don't want the teachers to punish you." He just gave a dismissive nod, without looking at me, and left with his backpack. But then I found out that sometimes he didn't even go to school. He'd just hang out with his friends without telling me. I remember one time, I was folding laundry in the living room when Ethan came in, a beer in his hand, his eyes as red as if he'd been crying. "Grandma," he said, his voice trembling, Did you ever think about hiring a better lawyer for my parents? I stopped folding and looked at him, surprised. I did what I could, Ethan, I answered softly. I borrowed money, ran from place to place, but your parents' crime was very serious. He stood there, clutching the beer, and suddenly yelled, "What you could all you do is stay here, cooking, cleaning. If you had done more, my parents wouldn't be in prison for life." I was frozen, not knowing what to say. Ethan turned his back on me, went into his room, and slammed the door. I sat down, hugging the t-shirt I hadn't finished folding, thinking about his words. It turned out that, to him, I was to blame. From then on, every time he called me old woman or ordered me to do something, I saw a hint of resentment in his eyes, as if I were a thorn in his side. Ethan started bringing friends home often. They'd gather in the living room, blasting country music, yelling like they were at a bar. I'd be in the kitchen, dicing onions for salsa, listening to the clinking of beer bottles and their shouts. Once, I brought out a plate of scrambled eggs and bacon, thinking I'd give them something to eat. "Have something to eat, boys, it's fresh," I said, trying to smile. Ethan glanced at me, then turned to his friends. "You guys help yourselves, just ignore her." One of them, in a loud football jersey, let out a chuckle. "Yeah, let the lady clean up, right, Ethan?" They all burst out laughing. I went back to the kitchen in silence, clutching the plate, and then went to my room, closing the door. Whenever he needed money, Ethan's attitude would change. He'd knock on my bedroom door, his voice sweet as honey. "Grandma, I need some cash for a group project. Can you lend me some?" I'd open my wallet, count out every dollar, and give it to him. "Here you go, be careful with it," I'd say quietly. He'd snatch the money, without looking at me, without a thank you, just mumbling, "Well, this is enough for now." Once, I tried to give him less, just $2,000 instead of the $3,000 he asked for. Ethan stood in front of me, his eyes cold. "Are you shorting me on purpose?" he asked, his voice sharp. I pressed my lips together, trying to stay calm. "I don't have that much, honey. We also have to buy food." He got angry. "I need it now. What does an old woman need so much money for? You're useless anyway." I stood there, looking into his eyes, but I didn't see a shred of humanity, only cold calculation. Every day, I saw more of my son, Samuel, in Ethan. The way he talked, the way he looked down on me, was identical to his father. I remembered those nights when Samuel would come home drunk, staggering, pointing at me and yelling, "All you know how to do is humiliate us." Once, he even slapped me, just because I told him to stop drinking. Now, Ethan was using that same tone, ordering me around, blaming me, as if I were a burden. "Dressed like that, no one would believe I'm your grandson," he said one day, when I was wearing my old sweater and a long skirt to go to the market with him. "Don't you look like a beggar?" I looked down at my worn-out shoes, said nothing, and quickened my pace to get back home. I kept enduring it, thinking I could handle it, because Ethan was the only family I had left. But one night, things got out of hand. I made dinner, setting the table with a pot roast I'd been slow cooking all afternoon. Ethan sat down, took 2 bites, and pushed the plate away with a look of disgust. "What is this tasteless crap? I need cash to go eat out with my friends," he said, annoyed. I shook my head. "I don't have extra, Ethan. Eat this. I made it with care." He jumped up, kicked the chair, and sent it flying. "I'd rather live with strangers than with a useless old woman like you," he screamed, and stormed into his room, slamming the door. I just stood there, looking at the overturned chair. Then I picked it up in silence, cleared the table, and folded the jacket he'd left on the floor. I washed the dishes, my hands shaking, but pretending I hadn't heard a thing. In his second year of college, Ethan suddenly announced he wanted to move out. I was chopping vegetables in the kitchen, and when I heard him, my hand froze. "I can't focus on my studies living with an old woman," he said, his voice calm, as if I were just an inconvenience. I stopped chopping and looked at him standing in the kitchen doorway, his hands in his pockets, his gaze passing over me like I was an old piece of furniture. "I see," I replied, trying to sound calm. "Have you found a place to live?" He nodded. "Yeah, a small apartment near campus. Get my things ready." I nodded, not asking any more questions, though deep down, I just wanted him to say something kind. I spent the whole week getting things ready for Ethan. I took out a wool blanket my mother had woven, folded it carefully, and put it in a bag. I bought new pots and pans at the market, Good ones, even though I had to haggle endlessly with the saleslady. I even went to the pharmacy and bought medicine for stomach aches and colds, and packed them in a plastic box. Ethan, here's what I got for you, I said, putting the bags on the table. There's medicine too, just in case you need it. He just glanced at it and mumbled, yeah, okay. Then he grabbed the bags, dragged his suitcase to the door, and left without saying goodbye. I stood in the doorway, clutching the hem of my blouse, watching his shadow disappear around the corner. The Chicago wind blew, icy and sharp, and it made me shiver. From then on, every time the phone rang, I knew it was Ethan. Not to ask how I was, but to ask for money. Grandma, I need $5,000 for tuition, he'd say, his voice rushed. Transfer it quick, tomorrow's the deadline. I'd reply, all right, let me see what I can do. Once he called, all worked up. Grandma, I lost my wallet. Help me out with $3,000, just this once. Silently, I went to the bank, withdrew the money, and deposited it into his account. I even asked the teller to set up an automatic monthly transfer of $4,000, so I wouldn't forget. But I never heard a, "Are you okay, Grandma?" or "I finished my exams, I'll visit you tomorrow." My phone only rang when he needed money, and then it would fall silent. My body started to give out, my back ached terribly. Every time I sat down, or stood up, it felt like needles were being driven into my bones. I went to the hospital alone, with my old cloth bag, waiting in a cold hallway. The doctor looked at the x-rays and shook his head. "Mrs. Thompson, you need a lot of rest. No heavy work." I nodded, but thought, how can I rest when I have a grandson to support? I didn't tell Ethan anything. Even if I did, he wouldn't care. I just wanted him to finish school, get a job, live a decent life, so I could have some peace of mind. One night, with my back pain unbearable, I couldn't sleep. I got up, turned on the small lamp, and looked around the house. It was large, but empty, as if no one lived there. My dinner plate was still on the table, because no one had eaten with me. I picked up the phone, dialed Ethan's number, just to hear his voice. The line was busy. I waited, but he never called back. From that day on, I turned off my phone and stopped calling him. I tried sending him a message once, while sitting on the porch with a warm mug of oatmeal. "How are you, honey? Take care of yourself and eat well." I waited all day, then all week, and there was no reply. But a few days later, the phone vibrated. A message from Ethan. "Grandma, can you send $9,000 this month? I'm short on rent." I just stared at the message, clutching the phone. "Okay," I replied, and transferred the money immediately. But after that, I didn't write to him again. I was afraid of getting my hopes up only to be disappointed again. I was living like a shadow in my own home. Every morning I'd get up early, make a little oatmeal, and eat alone. I'd clean, sweep the yard, water the cacti on the porch, but no one noticed. Rose, my neighbor, came by once and saw me sitting, lost in thought, at the table. "Eleanor, are you all right?" she asked, holding a basket of warm muffins. I gave a small smile. "Yes, Rose, I'm just tired." She nodded, but her eyes seemed to understand everything. "Take care of yourself. Don't wear yourself out for Ethan," she said. I just nodded, not answering, because I knew saying anything wouldn't change a thing. That afternoon, I was in the front yard, kneeling in the dirt, using a pair of shears to trim the grass growing between the cabbage plants. The Chicago sun was setting, golden and warm, but the wind was starting to pick up, carrying the scent of earth and the cactus flowers from the corner of the garden. I wiped the sweat from my brow with the rag I kept on my shoulder, carefully cutting each weed, trying to keep the little garden that Alexander, my late husband, used to tend so clean. The roar of a motorcycle at the end of the street startled me. I looked up and saw Ethan getting off, wearing a pristine white shirt, 2 buttons undone, a Rolex watch gleaming on his wrist. His face was beaming, as if he'd won the lottery or gotten a raise. I stood up, dusting the dirt from my knees, and watched him approach. "Grandma, come inside. I have something important to tell you," Ethan called out, his tone excited, very different from his usual sharp manner. I left the shears in the vegetable patch, wiped my hands on the rag, and replied, "All right, let me just wash my hands." I went into the house, my hands still smelling of dirt, and pulled an old wooden chair to sit across from him. Ethan dropped onto the sofa, crossing his legs, drumming his fingers on his knee like he owned the place. "Sit down, this is good news," he said, with a grin from ear to ear. I sat down. still holding the dirt-stained rag, and asked, "What's going on that has you so happy, Ethan?" He slicked his hair back, the watch flashing under the light. "I'm getting married, Grandma," he announced, his voice full of pride. "Her name is Anna. She's the daughter of the director at the company where I'm interning. She's beautiful, really nice, and has a house downtown. You don't have to worry about me not having a place to live." I smiled, nodded, thinking that maybe getting married would change him, make him a more decent person. "Really, that's wonderful, Ethan," I said softly. "What's this young woman like? Tell me about her." Ethan threw his hands up, his eyes shining. "Oh, Anna is incredible. She studied in the States, makes amazing lasagna, and she's so understanding. Her dad's company is huge. You know, it's in real estate, tons of money." I nodded, wanting to ask more about Anna, but Ethan cut me off, his voice turning more serious. "Grandma, I need you to help me with something big. Sell the farm out in the country, so I can have a decent wedding. Anna and I also need to buy a house. In our own names, we can't stay at her dad's place forever." I looked up, straight into his eyes. Ethan's face showed not a shred of shame, only a confident entitlement, as if the farm were something he could just take. I took a deep breath, clutching the rag, and said slowly, "Ethan, the farm is not for sale. Your grandfather and I put our sweat into that place. We planted every peach tree, cared for every chicken. Your grandfather died there. I'm going to go back and live there when I'm old." Ethan's brow furrowed, his smile vanished. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice starting to sound annoyed. "I need the money now, not your stories about memories. What do you want that farm for? To let it rot?" I shook my head, still calm. "I've given you everything. School, rent, whatever you ask for, I provide. But the farm is my memory. It's where I'll spend the rest of my days. You have to understand that." Ethan jumped to his feet, pointing at me, his voice shrill. "You've already lived your life. Now you have to think about your grandson. Or do you want me to beg you on my knees?" I looked at him, without blinking. "No, Ethan," I said, my voice firm. "I have always given in to you. Everything you want, I've gotten for you. But not this. The farm is never for sale." He huffed, his face red, clenching his fists. "Then hold on to your pile of dirt," he screamed. "You'll die there all alone, like some old dog, with no one to even look at you." I looked at him, not responding, just said, "I've done everything for you, but there are some things that are not yours to ask for." Ethan turned, walked toward the door, his shoes stomping hard on the wooden floor, echoing like hammer blows. "You're going to regret this," he spat, before yanking the door shut with a slam. I remained in the chair, still holding the dirt-stained rag. A gentle breeze came through the window, carrying the scent of the cactus flowers from the garden. It wasn't a cold wind, but it was enough to remind me that I'm still alive, that I have to hold on to what truly matters. I got up, took my shears, and went back out to the garden to continue trimming the grass, as if that conversation had never happened. As the evening fell, Rose, my neighbor, came by and saw me still working in the garden. "Eleanor, what are you so focused on?" she asked, carrying a basket of freshly made muffins. I gave a small smile, dusting the dirt from my hands. "Just cutting the grass, Rose, keeping the garden clean, just how my husband liked it." Rose nodded, looked at me for a moment, and said, "Ethan came by, didn't he? I saw him in a hurry." I nodded, not wanting to say much. "Yes, he came to talk about his wedding." Rose smiled. "That's great. You're getting a granddaughter in, but be careful. That boy is not a simple one." I just nodded, not responding, and invited her in for some oatmeal. But in my head, Rose's words sounded like a warning. One I already knew to be true. 2 weeks after Ethan asked me to sell the farm, he came back to the house, dragging an old suitcase and several boxes of his things. I was on the porch watering the cacti when I heard a motorcycle stop at the gate. Ethan walked in, his shirt unbuttoned, the Rolex still gleaming on his wrist, but without the radiant face he had last time. "I'm going to stay here for a while," he said, in an indifferent tone, as if I had no say in the matter. "The apartment I'm renting is under repair, just a few more weeks." I stopped watering, watched him cross the yard with his suitcase, and nodded. "All right, I'll get your room ready." He said nothing, just dragged the suitcase inside, leaving muddy tracks on the floor. Silently, I cleaned the empty room in the back of the house where Ethan used to live before he moved out. I swept the floor, dusted the table, put on fresh sheets, and left a pitcher of water on the nightstand. "The room's ready, Ethan," I said, from the doorway. He barely glanced at it and mumbled, "It's fine, but clean the windows, they're filthy." I nodded, took a rag, and did it, even though my back ached from standing for so long. I didn't ask any more questions. I just wanted everything to be peaceful. 3 days later, Ethan was back to his old ways. I was in the kitchen making a pot roast, the smell of herbs and beef filling the air, when he walked in and glanced at the pot. "What are you cooking?" "So boring," he grumbled, opening the fridge to grab a beer. "You don't like pot roast?" I asked, stirring the pot. "You always make the same things. It gets old," he replied dryly, and plopped down in a chair, staring at his phone. I fell silent and kept cooking, but he spoke again. "The dirty dishes are over there, Grandma. How am I supposed to eat with all this mess?" I looked at the sink, which only had a few plates he'd used that morning, and nodded. "I'll wash them." "Now," he said no more, just took a swig of his beer, his eyes fixed on the screen. One day, while I was sweeping the yard, I heard Ethan yell from the living room, "Grandma, sweep properly, what a pigsty." I left the broom, looked through the window, and saw him sitting with 2 friends, with beers all over the table and snack shells scattered on the floor. "All right, I'm sweeping," I said, entering with the broom. One of the friends let out a chuckle. "Your grandma sure is a hard worker, Ethan. Even a paid maid wouldn't do it this well." Ethan laughed loudly. "Yeah, and for free, since she's already here." I bent down, sweeping up the peanut shells as if I hadn't heard a thing. But one night, Ethan crossed the line. I had made a big pot of chicken noodle soup, simmering it carefully, thinking he would like it. I put it on the table and called him. "Ethan, come have dinner, it's nice and hot." He sat down, tasted 1 spoonful, and made a face of disgust. "What is this salty crap? How am I supposed to eat this?" I was taken aback. "Salty, honey." I seasoned it carefully. He threw his silverware on the table, kicked his chair, and knocked it over. "You do everything wrong," he yelled, got up, and stormed into his room, slamming the door. I stood there, looking at the overturned chair, and then I picked up the broken dishes and swept the floor. Rose, my neighbor, heard the noise and came knocking. "Eleanor, are you all right?" "I heard something break," she said, worried. I managed a small smile. "It's nothing, Rose. Ethan's just upset." She shook her head. "You spoil him too much. Be careful. He's not going to appreciate you." I just nodded, not responding. One day, Ethan was in the living room, scrolling through his phone, and suddenly said, "This house isn't yours. My parents left it. I have a right to be here." I was folding laundry and my hands froze. I knew full well that the deed is in my name. I've never transferred it to anyone, but I didn't want to fight. "The house is mine, Ethan," I said calmly. "But you're my grandson. I've always let you stay here." He let out a mocking laugh. "Yours. My dad built this house. You're just a freeloader." I didn't respond, just kept folding laundry, but in my head, it was clear the house papers were still in the safe. They've never left my hands. The following days, I lived like an unpaid maid. I cooked, washed dishes, swept, and cleaned up after Ethan's parties with his friends. Once, I brought a plate of deviled eggs for his friends, and one of them burst out laughing. "Your grandma is a super maid, Ethan." He laughed. "Yeah, good thing she's useful for something. Otherwise, she'd be out on her ass." I went back to the kitchen, clutching the plate, and continued washing dishes. I used to wash them out of love for my grandson, remembering when he was 4 and would cling to me saying, "Grandma." Now, I washed because I was afraid that if I didn't please him, he wouldn't leave me alone. He might even take my food away. But every time I picked up the rag, I told myself, "Eleanor, you have to live. You have to hold on to what's yours." After that loud party, when the house fell silent, I was in the kitchen, still holding the rag, looking towards the living room. Ethan was passed out on the sofa, drunk, snoring loudly, with an empty beer bottle rolling on the floor. His friends were gone, leaving a mess of glasses and the smell of stale beer. I tiptoed past, collecting each glass, stacking them on a tray, and stopped when I saw Ethan's phone on the table. Its screen lit up. I looked at it, then at my grandson, sleeping like a log. This time, I knew what to do. I picked up the phone, the screen still on, my heart pounding. I knew I had to save those videos, but I had no idea how. I only know how to send simple emails. I don't understand anything about videos. I went to Rose's house, knocked on the door, and saw Chris, her son, at his computer. "Chris, can you help me with something?" I asked, my voice trembling. He looked up, adjusting his glasses. "What's wrong, Mrs. Thompson?" I gave him the phone, told him a half-truth about last night, just saying I needed to save some important videos. Ethan never locks his phone. He even used to brag about it. Why would I lock it? It's a waste of seconds on something stupid. Chris took the phone, connected it to his laptop, made a few clicks, and said, "All set, ma'am. The videos are on this USB drive, and I also sent them to your email. You should check it." I nodded, clutching the small USB, thanking him 1,000 times. Back at home, I plugged the USB into my old laptop, opened my email, and there they were, the videos, saved securely. I sat down, my hands shaking, but my heart was as steady as a rock. I finished, checked Ethan's phone, and put it back in its place next to his crooked pillow. I straightened the pillow carefully, as if nothing had happened, and went to my room. In my room, I opened the safe, took out the papers, the deed to the house, the documents for the farm, my savings account. I caressed each page, checked every seal, all intact, in my name, without a single scratch. I sat down, picked up the phone, and dialed Amelia, my lawyer friend of many years. It rang a few times, and her voice answered, "Eleanor, it's late. Are you okay?" I took a deep breath and said, "Amelia, I need your help. Ethan has crossed the line." I briefly told her about the party, how he humiliated me, the videos he recorded, and all the years I've put up with it. "I have proof, Amelia," I said, my voice confident. "The videos he recorded of me, I have them all. I want you to start the paperwork to get him out of the house." Amelia was quiet for a moment, then replied, "Are you sure, Eleanor? He's your grandson." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I'm sure. I've given him every chance, but he doesn't see me as family. I have to protect myself." Amelia sighed. "All right, send me the videos. I'll prepare the documents. But be careful, Ethan is not someone to be taken lightly." I replied, "Thank you, Amelia. I know what I have to do." I hung up, sat in the chair, clutching the papers. Ethan thought he had me under his thumb, but he forgot that these old hands know how to hold on, let go, and keep what matters under lock and key. After sending the email to Amelia, I waited in her small office in downtown Chicago, my old cloth bag in my hands. Amelia adjusted her glasses, reviewing every paper I brought, the deed to the house, the documents for the farm, and the printout of the email with the videos. "Eleanor, this isn't simple," she said seriously. "Ethan is your grandson, and even though he treats you badly, the law considers him family living in the house. We need to prove he's a threat, and we have to wait a few weeks for the court to process the eviction notice." I nodded, though my heart felt heavy. "Can you do it, Amelia?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "I don't want him there. I'm afraid he'll do something worse." Amelia put her hand on my shoulder and nodded. "I'll do it, but you have to be patient. I need you to sign some papers, and you might have to go to court once." I sighed, looking out the window at the cars passing under the bright sun. I knew this path wouldn't be easy, but I had already made my decision. The next morning, I got up early, made some oatmeal, and sat down to eat it on the porch. Ethan was still asleep in the living room, knowing nothing. I looked at the garden, where the cacti had red flowers. Rose walked by, with a basket of muffins, and called out, "Eleanor, how's your morning? Want a muffin? Freshly baked." I smiled, waved my hand. "Thanks, Rose. Let me get you some oatmeal to share." She came in, sat on the porch, and saw the beer glasses from last night. "Ethan's party?" she asked, frowning. "Yes, him and his friends," I replied, handing her a bowl of oatmeal. "But you need to be careful with that boy, my friend," Rose said seriously. "I see his father in him. He doesn't value the person who takes care of him." I nodded, taking a sip of my coffee. "I know, Rose, but this time, I'm not going to let him do whatever he wants." Rose nodded, not asking any more questions, but her eyes seemed to understand everything. I went inside the house, checked the safe, making sure everything was secure. Ethan was still asleep, unaware that I had already taken the first step to reclaim what was mine. A few days after the party, I was in the kitchen, drinking a hot cup of coffee, the roasted aroma calming me. Amelia, my friend, worked as fast as she promised. She sent me a thick package with the official eviction notice for Ethan, documents with red seals, clear terms, and my signature at the bottom of the page. I took the package, reviewed each page, and placed it on the table, waiting for the right moment. Around 10 in the morning, the doorbell rang. A young mail carrier was at the door with an envelope, calling out, "A delivery for Eleanor Thompson." I went out, thanked him, and brought the envelope into the house. Ethan was in the living room, on his phone, with his feet up on the table. "Is that for me?" he asked, without taking his eyes off the screen. "No, it's mine," I replied, placing the envelope in front of him. "But you should read it." He frowned, took the envelope, and tore it open. After reading a few lines, he turned pale, his hands shaking. "What is this?" he yelled, throwing the papers on the floor. "You have no right to kick me out of this house. It belongs to my parents." I walked down the stairs, crossed my arms, and looked him straight in the eye. "This house has never been yours or your parents', Ethan," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I've never transferred the deed to anyone. It's still in my name." Ethan jumped up, pointing at my face, screaming, "How dare you do this to me? I'm your grandson. You think you can just throw me out?" I shook my head, took my phone out of my pocket, and opened the video he recorded at the party. You could hear his laughter and his friends, along with the phrase, "Drink the water from the toilet, old woman." I showed him the phone and said slowly, "I've already sent this video to the company where you work. Anna, your future wife, also has a copy. It wasn't hard to find the address of her father's company, Ethan. And the police have a copy too, for the record, in case anything happens to me in this house." Ethan staggered, his legs weak, his hands trembling, his mouth open, unable to say a word. He looked at me, then at the phone, as pale as if he'd seen a ghost. "You, what did you do?" He, stammered. I walked to the table, took the papers out of the safe, and placed them in front of him. The deed to the house, the documents for the farm, the savings account, all in my name, with red seals from years ago. "Here you go," I said, my voice resolute. "I stayed quiet for 7 years because I thought you could change. I gave you money, a place to live. I cooked, I cleaned, because I thought you were my grandson, but you never saw me as family." Ethan collapsed onto the sofa, his hands on his head, but he still yelled, "You really want me on the street? Are you that cruel?" I bent down, looked him in the eye, without flinching. "You called me trash, Ethan. You wanted to get me out of your life like I was a useless piece of junk. But what you threw away that day was your last chance." He got up, his face red, and started packing his things, shoving clothes into his suitcase, while muttering, "You're going to pay for this, you old hag." I just stood there, my arms crossed, not responding. As he dragged his suitcase to the door, he turned around, pointing at me. "You just wait, old woman. I'm not going down like this." I looked at him, said nothing, and closed the door as the sound of the suitcase wheels faded away. That night, I locked my bedroom door, checked the safe, making sure the papers were secure. I got into bed, pulled the old wool blanket over me, and slept the deepest I had in years. No nightmares, no waking up from back pain or worry. The next morning, Rose came by the house. Seeing me, she asked, "Eleanor, are you okay? I saw Ethan leaving with his suitcase yesterday. He looked furious." I poured her a coffee and replied, "I'm fine, Rose, he's gone. I'm not holding him back anymore." She frowned. "You did the right thing. That boy doesn't appreciate you. But what are you going to do now?" I smiled slightly, taking a sip of coffee. "Live for myself, Rose. It's about time." She nodded, patting my shoulder. "You're strong, Eleanor. If you need anything, just call me." I nodded, looking at the garden, where the cacti stood firm under the morning sun. A week after Ethan left with his suitcase, I was on the porch, drinking some coffee, when Teresa, the lady who sells baked goods at the market, passed by with a steaming basket. "Eleanor, not going to the market today?" she called out, stopping at the gate. I stood up, wiping my hands on a rag, and smiled. "No, I'm staying home today, getting some rest. Want to come in for some coffee?" Teresa nodded, came in, and placed the basket on the table. "I just heard some hot gossip at the market," she said, her voice curious. "Ethan, your grandson, he got fired from his job, right? They say it was for mistreating an elderly person. There's even a video." I nodded, pouring a coffee for Teresa. "Yes, that's true," I replied, my voice calm. "I sent the video he recorded at the party to his company. They don't want someone like that." Teresa frowned, took her coffee, and shook her head. "You did the right thing, Eleanor. That boy doesn't appreciate you. But how is he now? They say he's having a hard time. I shrugged, placing a muffin on the table. I don't know, Teresa. He doesn't talk to me anymore. Teresa nodded, taking a bite of her muffin. I'm sure he regrets it now, but it's too late. Don't you go soft on him. You hear? He gave a small smile. No, I know what I have to do. One morning, while sweeping the yard, my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered and heard a young, trembling voice. Mrs. Thompson. It's Anna, Ethan's fiancée. I put down the broom, sat in the wooden chair on the porch, my heart pounding. I received the video you sent, she said, her voice choked with emotion. I didn't know Ethan would do that to you. I confronted him, but he just cursed and told me to stay out of it. I can't be with someone like that. I remained silent, listening to her sigh over the phone. Grandma, I'm so sorry. I should have realized sooner, I replied softly. It's all right, Anna. You did what was right for you. She hung up, leaving me there, looking at the dry leaves in the yard. I wasn't angry with Anna, I just felt pity for her. But I knew she was stronger than she thought. Days later, I heard about Ethan. One morning, while buying vegetables at the market, Mr. Johnson, who sells roasted chickens, pulled me aside and whispered, Eleanor, did you hear? Your grandson's fiancée left him, blocked him, won't answer his calls. I nodded, picking out some carrots, and replied, I'm not surprised, Mr. Johnson. She saw the video. He shook his head, wrapping up a chicken. What a shame, he brought this on himself. You raised him for so many years, and this is how he repays you. So ungrateful. I just smiled, paid, and left with my bag, not wanting to talk about it anymore. Ethan tried to get help from family. I knew because I called everyone, telling them everything from the beginning. My cousin Mary, who lives in Denver, called me one afternoon. Eleanor, Ethan came to my house, asking to stay for a few days, she said over the phone, annoyed, but I turned him away. He said you threw him out on the street, but I know you're not like that. You told me everything. I'm not helping someone like him. I held the phone, my voice calm. Thank you, Mary. I don't want him to depend on anyone else. He needs to take responsibility. Mary sighed. You're strong, Eleanor. If you need anything, call me. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. Yes, I know. According to Teresa, Ethan rented an old room on the outskirts of Chicago. Someone from the market saw him sitting in front of an internet cafe, wearing an old shirt, with a scruffy beard, looking like a lost soul. He looks like a beggar, Eleanor, Teresa told me when I saw her at the market days later. No one talks to him, no one helps him. I nodded, choosing some cilantro, and replied, he chose that path, Teresa. I can't pull him back. She patted my shoulder. You did the right thing now. Live for yourself. The following month, I moved to the farm, in the countryside, where Alexander and I built everything when we were young. The wooden house is still quiet, smelling of old wood and dry earth. I walked barefoot on the floor, feeling every grain of sand under my feet. I took the shears, pruned the branches of the peach trees Alexander planted, now taller than me. I watered the vegetables, pulled out the weeds, and dusted off an old photo frame in the living room. Everything was the same, except now this place is all mine. Ethan, the grandson who trampled on me, who called me maiden trash, no longer dares to cross the farm's gate. They say he's still wandering the outskirts, but I'm no longer interested. Every night, I light a small candle on the altar for Alexander. I don't pray, I just whisper, thank you, Alexander, for leaving me a place to come back to. Then I sit, watching the flame, its warm lights filling the silent room. One morning, I ran into Mr. Miller, the gardener for the neighboring houses, when he brought me some vegetable seeds. Eleanor, have you settled in here? He asked, standing at the gate, with a bag of seeds in his hand. Yes, I've come to live here, Mr. Miller, I replied, taking the seeds and offering him a glass of lemonade. This place is peaceful. It suits you, he said, looking at the garden. Ethan doesn't come around anymore, right? I shook my head, with a faint smile. No, he doesn't belong here. I live for myself now. Mr. Miller nodded, took a sip. You're very strong, Eleanor. Live well, you deserve it. I nodded, watching him leave through the gate, my heart lighter than ever before. The beginning of winter at the farm brought a crisp air. The dry leaves from the peach trees fell onto the wooden roof, rustling with each gust of wind. I sat on the porch with a cup of jasmine tea I had brewed myself. The the warmth of the mug heating my old hands. The scent of jasmine, soft and not overpowering, comforted me after a day in the garden. The winter sun filtered through the trees, golden, illuminating the vegetable patch I had recently planted. In the distance, sparrows chirped from the bushes, as if chatting about the day. I was pruning the branches of the peach trees when I heard footsteps at the gate. Helen, a neighbor from a few houses down, came in with a basket of steaming tamales. "Eleanor, your garden is beautiful, even though you're all alone," she called out, with a huge smile. I stood up, dusting the dirt from my skirt, and replied, "Thank you, Helen. Come have some tea with me. It's jasmine. I just made it." She nodded, placed the basket on the wooden table on the porch, and sat across from me. "Are you happy living here, Eleanor?" she asked, taking a piece of tamale, looking at me with curiosity. I poured the tea into a cup, passed it to her, and smiled slightly. "I don't know if I'm happy, Helen, but I feel like I'm living the life I want." She took a sip and nodded. "This tea is delicious. How do you make it so good? Everyone in town says you prune trees like no one else and make incredible tea. Everyone wants to learn." I laughed, pointing to the garden. "There's no secret. I learned from my mother. You just have to be patient. The trees, the tea, just like people, they need care." Helen nodded, biting into her tamale. "You're right. Hey, I heard rumors about your grandson. He doesn't come around anymore, right?" I put down my cup, looking at the trees. "No, he doesn't come anymore," I replied calmly. "He has his path, and I have mine." Helen frowned, lowering her voice. "They say at the market that he's in trouble, that he's having a hard time. Aren't you going to help him?" I shook my head. "I've helped him enough, Helen. Now, I'm living for myself." She nodded, not asking any more questions, and just said, "You're very strong, Eleanor. Not everyone could do what you did." I smiled, pouring her more tea. "Thank you, but I just want to live in peace." In the following days, I made friends in town. No one knew that Ethan had called me a maid, that he forced me to cook, clean, or made me a laugh. They only knew me as Eleanor, the one who prunes trees with skill, makes delicious jasmine tea, and takes walks in the evenings on the red dirt road. That one day, Mr. Miller came by with a bag of tomato seeds. "Eleanor, try these, they're good," he said, handing me the bag. "Thank you, Mr. Miller, I'll plant them," I replied, inviting him to sit on the porch. "This place is peaceful, it suits you perfectly," he said, looking at the garden. "Hey, I heard about your grandson at the market. They say he's wandering the outskirts alone, without any help. Doesn't that worry you?" I took a sip of tea, shook my head. "No, Mr. Miller. He chose his path. I did everything I could. Now I want to live for myself." He nodded, patting my shoulder. "You're strong. If you need anything, just call me, okay?" I smiled. "Thank you. I'll keep that in mind." He put on his hat, leapt through the gate, leaving the seeds on the table. Every afternoon, I'd walk through the town, with a bottle of water, admiring the little wooden houses, the green vegetable patches. Brenda, a new neighbor, saw me on the road and called out, "Eleanor, you walk so fast. How do you stay so strong?" I laughed, stopping, just stretching my legs. "Care to join me?" She laughed loudly. "I have to learn from you." "Hey, do you teach how to make your jasmine tea?" "I want to learn." I nodded. "Of course, come by my house whenever you want. I'll teach you." Brenda clapped her hands. "That's wonderful. You're a treasure in this town." I laughed, continued walking, my heart light. I didn't need to tell my past, or for them to understand the years I suffered. I just wanted to live as a person, not as the shadow of an unloved grandmother. I am Eleanor Thompson, the woman who rose from the ashes of her own life. Every night, I light a candle for Alexander on the small altar, and I whisper, "Thank you for leaving me a place to come back to." Then I sit, watching the flame, its warm light filling the wooden house with peace. Winter passed, and my farm welcomed the warm days of spring. Every morning, I'd wake up early, go out to the garden to water the tomatoes that Mr. Miller had given me as seeds. The red fruits hung heavy, and I would harvest them carefully, placing them in a wicker basket. I liked feeling the cool earth under my feet, the smell of wet grass after a night's rain. The wooden house was still quiet, but now it was filled with the songs of birds and the rustle of leaves, instead of the heavy silence of Chicago. I'd make a cup of jasmine tea, sit on the porch, and watch the sun filter through the peach trees, my heart lighter than ever. I started to get used to my new life. The neighborhood was friendly. People would stop by the house, bringing tamales, oranges, or just to chat. One day, Brenda arrived with a jar of homemade mango jam. "Eleanor, try this. I made it just like my mom taught me," she said, placing the jar on the table. I smiled, pouring her some tea. "Thank you, Brenda. Let me get some muffins to go with it." We sat on the porch, drinking tea and eating jam, talking about how to grow vegetables. "Your garden is impeccable," Brenda praised, pointing at the green cilantro. "What's your secret? You have to teach me." I laughed loudly. "Just patience. Talk to the plants every day, and they grow well." Brenda clapped. "You're a garden witch. When can I come over to learn?" I nodded. "Whenever you want, just stop by." I participated in a small town fair, bringing jasmine tea and homemade orange marmalade. People loved it, praising the aroma of the tea and the sweetness of the marmalade. Mr. Johnson, from the roasted chicken stand at the market, bought 2 jars, laughing loudly. "Eleanor, this marmalade is better than the one from the big market. Make more. I'm calling dibs." I replied cheerfully, "Thank you, but you have to bring me a roasted chicken." "Okay." He nodded, winking. "It's a deal. A jar for a chicken, right?" I laughed, nodding, my heart warmed by these simple relationships. One afternoon, while I was pruning the peach trees, the phone rang. I wiped my hands, answered, and saw an unknown number. "Hello, who's calling?" I asked cautiously. There was a silence, then Ethan's voice, low and hoarse. "Grandma, it's me." I froze, clutching the phone, not responding immediately. "Are you okay?" he asked, hesitating. "I want to apologize. I was wrong, Grandma. I shouldn't have treated you like that." I just stood there, looking at the garden, my voice calm. "Ethan, why are you calling?" He cleared his throat, as if gathering courage. "I know I was a disaster, Grandma. I lost my job, Anna, everything. I just want you to forgive me. I want to visit you." I took a deep breath, put down my shears, and replied, "Ethan, I gave you many chances. You called me trash. You treated me like a servant. I have nothing left to give you." He rushed to say, "Grandma, I'm truly sorry. Just give me one chance. I'll change." I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "You chose your path. I've chosen mine. Don't call me again." I hung up, put the phone down, and continued pruning, my hands steady. That night, I lit a candle for Alexander, as always. The flame glowed, illuminating the wooden living room. "You see, Alexander," I whispered, "I'm living well. No one can hurt me anymore." I sat, sipping my tea, listening to the wind slip through the window. No worries, no fear. I live for myself, not for others. I didn't tell anyone about Ethan's call. I didn't need them to know my past, or to pity me. I just wanted to live as Eleanor Thompson, the woman who prunes trees, makes tea, and finds peace in simple days. Every afternoon, I would walk through the town, looking at the wooden houses, the green vegetable patches. I'd stop to chat with Mr. Miller, Brenda, or whoever I met. "Eleanor, you're walking so much you look younger," Mr. Miller joked when he saw me pass by. "It's the jasmine tea, Mr. Miller," I replied, laughing. He clapped his hands. "You have to sell me the secret to not getting old." I shook my head, continued walking, my heart as light as a spring breeze. The story we've told is fictional, but it is based on certain real events. The names and places have been changed to protect the identities of those involved. We don't tell this story to judge, but in the hope that someone will listen and stop to think, how many mothers are suffering in silence within their own homes? I'm genuinely curious. If you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you dare to confront it all, to reclaim your voice? I want to know what you think, because every story is a candle that can light the way for someone else. God always blesses, and I firmly believe that courage leads us to better days. Meanwhile, on the end screen, I'm leaving you 2 of the channel's most beloved stories. I assure you, they will surprise you. Thank you for staying until the end.